Mics are hot.
Good morning. It's the KC and KW show, and we're coming to you just off the banks of the St. Lucie River here in South Florida on Stewart. And another great show on tap today. To my right, we have, of course, my co-host, KW Miller. How are you doing, KW?
Hey, Casey. How are you this morning?
And I am doing well, and I'm going to work on my audio here. I always do this every week. Iggy's used to this with me. I always have my audio on some
We're audiovisual
device.
challenged. We're challenged here.
So anyways, I think I have that taken care of now. Also on the line with me, we have Keith Moskowitz. And Keith runs Archie's up in Fort Pierce, Archie Seabreeze Restaurant. It's absolutely wonderful. And how are you doing this morning, Al?
I'm doing really well, but you've got it as Al, not Keith. On Facebook.
There is a Keith Moskowitz. You're right. Iggy is fixing that right now as we speak. So it is Al. Not only call you Al, you are Al.
Casey's having a rough morning here already.
That's right.
Rough shot out of the gate.
So Al, you contacted us earlier this week and had a little surprise tax bill come in the mail.
Boy, that's putting it mildly. We every year there's something in Florida called the acronym is SUI, S-U-I, State Unemployment Insurance, and all businesses that have a certain number of employees have to pay it. It's basically a percentage based on the number of an experience that you have with unemployment, based more than one factor, but mostly on the number of claims that are put against your business for people who have worked, along with how many people you have working. And there is a percentage based on that relationship score that goes against the first $7,000 that your employees make in a given calendar year. So that's the calculation in rough terms. There's a little more to it, but that's the lion's share of it. And typical numbers, the year before last, we were at 0.9%. The year before that, 0.87. Last year was 0.68. This year, 0.54 or 5.4. Sorry.
Wow.
So we've seen in real numbers, and I don't mind sharing them. I mean,
please do.
It's not confidential information by any stretch. We paid last year a total of $1,251.74. I'm sorry, $1,888.27. $1,888.27 for the entire year of 2020. So far, the first quarter of 2021, we've gotten a bill for, let me get the number exactly right, $8,273.06.
Wait a minute. Al, say that again. Last year, for the entire year, it was just over $1,800. And
just under 1,900, 1,888.27. And in the first quarter of this year, 8,273.06.
Astounding.
That's based on a taxable wage amount. I said it's up to the first 7,000, right?
Yes.
That's based on a taxable wage amount of 153, whereas it was 182,000 last year. So less of salary total and 661% more as a total.
Al runs it, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, Archie Seabreeze. It's a wonderful little restaurant. It's got a ton of local flavor and excellent food there. It's one of our favorite small businesses in the area. And Al, I'm just thinking that is such a tremendous increase. What does that mean to your business? What does that mean, for employing people?
Well, I mean, any kind of the problem with this year, more than just as much, if I should say, of the magnitude, was the surprise. We didn't know this was coming. I guess in retrospect, you know how when something happens to you and you get surprised by it, you go back and look and say, now I should have seen, when you're crossing the road, why didn't I see that truck coming down there that just smacked me in the side of my head? We didn't know this was coming. It wasn't made obvious to us. There was stuff going around in retrospect that I saw in the correspondence that mentioned things, but there's nowhere it was clear that this was coming. So the answer to your question is, when you're running a business, our typical margins right now, Archie's was in a little bit of trouble when we took over about 3 years ago, and we've been working to get it better. And we have not had, if you look at the last 3 years over any 3 years in the history of the world, this was not the 3 years to try to rebuild a business.
No.
But we still managed to do pretty well, and we were doing well even after Corona hit, because we got some help. But when you get hit with a large bill like this unexpectedly, and your margins are around 1.5% total, I can't tell you. It doesn't come. It's not welcome. It's something that you kind of try to make sure that doesn't happen again. And along those lines, I don't want to get too far off track, but that's the thing that bothers me the most. We can prepare for just about anything if you give me enough leadway and time. But it seems to me, since the change in the administration this year, things are just kind of, it's almost like whimsical as to what's coming at us. And we don't get any time to plan. And we certainly don't get any time to react. So the reactions are all traumatic, and it's hard to recover from anything like that. But right now, we were able to absorb it. I want to say something else too. The problem about the unemployment, that's what this is. It's funding unemployment. The biggest problem isn't that we got hit with a big bill. The bigger problem is that we can't find anybody new who is excited about coming to work.
Al, I've seen these signs, and KW, I think you have as well. Just through social media, different restaurants are saying, please, take it easy on our staff. They're here working. We're understaffed. We can't find enough people to work. So yes, the service is slower. We can't do anything about it because they can't find people to work. You have these jobs, you're willing to pay them, and lacking the body.
That's exactly right. And on the island here, just for people who might be listening that aren't familiar with our area, if you're in Fort Pierce, this part of Hutchinson Island is called South Hutchinson Island, but down where you are in Stewart, this would be considered, I guess, North Hutchinson Island. We're the last stop, basically, before you get to the inlet in Fort Pierce.
Right.
And on this part of the island, there's probably 8 to 10 small to medium-sized restaurants, and that are also bars. And just in this little area, over the past 3 months, 2 of those restaurants have had to shut down completely for a couple of days because of the lack of staffing. And one of them is still opening late, 2 days a week, because of challenges finding staffing. So we've put out, I don't even know, a half a dozen ads over the past 3 months. And when we do that, in normal circumstances, we usually get up to 50, 60 responses in the first 3 or 4 days. The last couple times we've done this, we've sometimes gone days without any responses.
Wow.
And I would say over the past 3 months, we've done at least 6 different ads, and we've received maybe 10 applications, 5 people who actually came in, and none of which panned out.
And another thing I want to point out here is this winter time, usually like November through about now May, is what we call season in Florida. And this is where servers, wait staff, they really make a lot of money because we have all the snowbirds that come down and vacation down here. So it's incredible that during season, you cannot find bodies to work, and that's when the money is flowing. I mean, summer's coming up, right?
There is a good side of this. We have, and I don't mind saying it in public, I'll shout it from the rooftops, we have the best staff ever. We have a group of people here. We have 23 people now, and every last one of them is killing themselves. They're hard workers. They're dedicated. One of the big things that restaurants face is what's called the dreaded no-call, no-show.
Right.
People don't show up for their shift, and there's no notice. We've had one of those in the past 3 months, and that just happened the other day. But that was a situation that wasn't related directly to this. There's something else going on there. Other than that, we haven't had anything like that in months. And that's because this particular staff we have is amazing.
And that's great.
So I want to make sure everybody knows that. Now, the good news for them is they're making a killing. They're doing really well. but they're killing themselves. I mean, it's called a killing for a reason.
Right, right.
So we have some folks that are working 6 doubles a
Oh,
week,
that's just crazy.
and then their day off is a normal shift. And look forward to having a normal shift, because that's like a day down, a down day.
Yeah, and you certainly got to be concerned about burnout with your staff, and it's definitely rubs salt in an open wound, as they say, in the fact that you have to pay so much more into the unemployment system, and on the other hand, it's hard to find anybody to come and work. It's like, wait a minute, are we paying these people too much and too long that they just don't want to come out and look for a job anymore? It's easier to sit at home and collect a check.
You're absolutely. There's none of this is proof. We don't have any proof, but I tell you, that's absolutely what's going on. I work with an organization that works to get homeless veterans out of the woods. It's called Angels of Hope Ministries, and they have a slogan that says, "We give a hand up, not a handout." We help people to try to improve their situation so that they don't have to be in the woods. Well, we don't seem to have that on a national level, especially. Florida's better than most places, thanks to our governor.
Right.
But we don't, we're not doing hand up. We're basically saying, look, if you don't want to work, don't work. I know you're worried. A lot of people are worried about the coronavirus still being out there and mutating and all this. And there's some of that too. I mean, some of it's legitimate from that perspective, that people are afraid to go out and do things, but that doesn't explain everything.
No.
This is, and I'm going to say it, I hope KW is sitting down.
He's right here.
Well, it's a taste of socialism. And people better wake up and smell the roses pretty soon, because this is the way that these things pan out. The idea sounds great. Everybody's taken care of. Everybody makes a good living. Everybody works hard. Everybody succeeds. But what really ends up happening is the government takes care of too much, and people become complacent. It kills incentives. And that's what we're seeing now. And I know those folks are thinking to themselves, you know what? I'm going to take my time off, because there's going to be a time when this is all over where I have to go back and work hard. So I'm going to enjoy this time off. But what they don't realize is it becomes self-perpetuating. The things that are being caused by this aren't going to get better until you stop doing this. In order to stop doing this, you have to go back to work. And it's kind of a circle, right?
Absolutely, it is,
Al.
Al.
About printing money for a minute? I mean, what's that going to do to the economy, the worth of the dollar, all that stuff?
Absolutely.
Al, this goes back to one of my pet peeves, my top theme. If you go back to the summer of 2020, we'll call it the Kamala Harris summer of love, which was basically the summer of loot, pillage, plunder, and steal and murder and rape and kill Americans. The reality is here, the liberal leftist regime wants to create a permanent social welfare class. So what you're witnessing and experiencing as a small business owner is just one small piece of a very large movement to create a perpetual social welfare class. People will be given things, and they'll be basically enticed not to work. And that is what you're starting to feel as a small business owner today. It's being felt across the country, and it's just and hearing it from you is just further evidence that it's reality. It's not a fictional item. It's actually happening.
Well, I had an opportunity to talk to someone who was in their 20s the other day about that general topic. We got started on riots and things like that, but where it ended up was, people, I guess, I can't remember exactly how I was prompted into this, but it was something like, well, communism even wouldn't be that bad. I said, guys, what you don't remember, I grew up in a world where half of the world could not leave their country. There were walls up with people with guns on it to keep the people in. And this person looked at me like I was from Mars and didn't believe me. She said, what do you mean they weren't allowed to leave? I said, it was called the Eastern Bloc. If you go back and look, I don't even know what the history books say these days, because we could do probably a whole show on revisionist history. But all three of us lived through this. This isn't a story that we heard.
Right.
There was a wall dividing Berlin in half that basically was symbolic of the entirety of Europe. Half of it was one way and half was the other, and the half in the eastern side could not leave under duress. You were not free to travel as you pleased. Well, she couldn't believe it. I said, listen, the first thing that happens too is they get you dependent. And then they can do whatever they want.
Well, that's right, Al. So, Al, what I'm going to encourage you to do, and I'm going to encourage everybody to do, is go to KW Miller America First, and it's pinned right at the top of the Facebook page, is a video, a 26-minute video that I put out on June 1st, 2020, when America was burning. We probably had 10 or 15 cities on fire, including Washington, D.C., and that was the night that the terrorist tried to burn down the church across the street from the White House. And the video basically was impromptu, unscripted, and basically what I told America, and this video went viral nationally, it blew internet up, was that the liberal leftist agenda is to create a permanent social welfare class. Simply put, to get everybody hooked on the drug of free something, whether it's free health care, whether it's free a food credit card every month. It's not food stamps anymore. They give you a credit card. They load up your debit card every month, and you get a little debit card. Or it's free something. It's free housing.
Well, wasn't one of the candidates offering his platform $1,000 a week minimum salary?
Right. Yeah. It's it's perpetual unemployment. Now, if you've noticed, how many? Now, look, COVID aside, it's time to go back to work. How many more months can the federal government offer and continue to promulgate nonstop unemployment for those that just don't want to work? Okay? And how many more stimulus payments can be made to people who do not want to work? The story that you're telling us today, Al, is what we're hearing across the country. Business owners cannot get people to show up and go to work. They just refuse to come in to go to work. Has nothing to do with COVID, has nothing to do with health, has nothing to do with safety. They just do not want to work.
And it's sad. And how long can we keep kicking this funding can down the road?
That's the magic question, because when you look at the math, we're already at $30 trillion in debt. And I said in this video, I encourage everybody to watch it, I said the liberal left is going to come back to the table. This is June 1st, 2020, for $3 to $5 trillion, minimum $3 to $5 trillion of social welfare spending, and they're going to ask us to bail out all of the leftist-run cities who have allowed and encouraged the looting, the rioting, the pillaging, the plundering. Now, they've come back for more than $5 trillion. Nancy Pelosi's ask was $3 trillion right up the bat. Then they did another $1.9 trillion. Okay, now they want to do another infinite trillion for Green New Deal, which is essentially a tax. And of course, now they want we'll call it. It's really a social spending bill, which is really the code for infrastructure, which is basically not infrastructure.
Right.
Infrastructure are roads, power plants, pipelines. They are absolutely not doing that. They're basically looking to just continue to spend. So what's going to happen is they're going to spend us into the grave. And that's what's happening in the country today. We're basically being spent to the grave because we cannot pay the bills. And Al, you got a 400% increase in the first quarter, correct?
It was 661, but the idea is there. Yeah.
Okay, right. So I didn't catch all your math. Okay, so even worse. So that's just the tip of the iceberg, because individual taxes are going up, federal taxes are going up, unemployment taxes are going up, essentially fuel taxes are going up. Food prices are going up. Lumber is going up. You can't even buy a sheet of plywood now for less than $100. It's varying from $75 to $100 a sheet of plywood. The cost of living under the liberal socialist leftist regime is going up, and the bottom line on that is, it hits the wall. It hits the wall when you run out of everybody's money. Okay, and you're the one that's basically paying the bill at the end of the day. It's your money they're spending.
I completely agree. The scary part about this continual funding, I call it printing money, is the vast majority of the money that's being printed is not going to what it's been used to justify. Take a look at that 1.9 trillion. How much of it actually goes in stimulus and things back into this country or into the people? It's almost nothing.
No, it's a complete sham. It's a complete fraud, and 100% of the entire spending since, we'll call it, the liberal leftist, Biden, Harris, and their handlers have gotten in office, has been essentially non-stimulus based spending. I mean, less than 10% of the COVID money went for COVID relief.
Right.
I mean, you can't make these things up. But, Al and Casey, and this is going to sound bad, but it's the reality. The politicians and their handlers and the political marketing machine understands that voters, in typical terms, are 2 steps below dumb, and they count on that. They use that against them, and so it's a sad thing. I tell my viewers all the time on America First that you're viewed as an idiot by the political parties. They treat you like an idiot, and are you an idiot? Okay, and if you're not, stand up and be accounted for. But the problem is, every election cycle, that last 6 months, they pander, they promote, and they pimp out the usual. It's kind of like in Africa. I'll give you an example. In South Africa, I can tell you that, for example. The African National Congress, which is equivalent to the U.S. Democratic Party, goes into all of the towns and villages, and they give out water bottles, hats, T-shirts, and trinkets. And they basically get everybody all pumped up and all jacked up, and then the black South Africans go in and vote for the same old thing every time, and then at the election over, and they don't see them for 4 years over there. Okay, and here it's every 2 years and 4 years as well. So that's what you've got basically. The Democrats roll in, they give tricks, trinkets, and whatnots. They offer free things, and they jack up the people, and that's what we're facing as a nation right now. I don't need any more hats. I don't need more T-shirts. I don't need more water bottles. Okay, we need fiscal responsibility. But the problem you have is they're putting people on the drug, Al and KC. The drug is called free things. Okay, you can pick what that free thing is, but it's a promise of free things. And what comes with that promise is the fact that you don't have to work. And that's what you're facing, Al.
Well, you're talking about relative, I'll call it knowledge, awareness, and understanding, not really smarts. But people these days are not taught, especially the younger generation. They don't understand where we've been. And if you don't know where we've been, you're going to go right back to it again.
That's right.
I got a friend who's actually, he's not when I say friend, it's hard in this social media driven day, who's a friend and what does friend mean? I'll specify. A person who friended me on Facebook at some point in the past he's on the other side of most things that we talk about, and he has since defriended me. But before he defriended me, one of the things that he used to show that Biden, the Biden administration was doing a good job was the approval rating. I said, you got to be kidding. I mean, listen, I'll tell you what. I'll go down to a bunch of people who are struggling and start handing out $100 bills, and then 5 minutes later you walk in and ask what they think of me.
Exactly.
You're not going to get, that's like asking, outside of a college town's bar whether the drinking age should be 18 or 21. That's the fundamental error with any kind of statistical analysis. That means absolutely nothing.
Well,
but as long as it can be kept up, then the ratings are going to be there. People are going to be, quote, happy. It's like being led to the slaughter. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, you've hit one of my pet peeves as well, which is education, because the reality is the Democrats and their handlers, the liberals, and it's not, when I say Democrats, they're all bought and paid for, and the lobbyists are just tools. It's the apparatus behind them are fully aware that if they capture our U.S. education system, that they've already captured the higher education. The colleges and universities are already captured. Okay, they are 100% liberal. Even the small Christian colleges are getting crucified now off the transgender issues to basically comply. Okay, they're using all the transgender issues where it goes against their religious principle to allow a male into a female bathroom, for example, or a male to be forced into a female dorm. But they're using that as a tool to beat these private colleges into submission. But the public universities, all of the national state universities, University of Florida, Florida State University, all the big public schools have been brought into liberal compliance over the last 15, 20 years. Where they are now is on the final nail in the coffin, which is killing school choice. And by killing school choice, they force the majority of the American population into public schools with unionized teachers, with standard protocols, and the narrative is there is no, history is bad, you're racist, Your children don't get taught Civics 101, History 101. They don't get taught the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't get taught, the very basics
The Holocaust.
of the Holocaust or anything about our history. And the one thing people fail to recognize about history is that history is not racist. History is just a fact. Okay, history is a fact. You can learn something from it, but you have to teach it. And what they're trying to do is scrub and essentially remove our history and pretend we never had a history and that everybody who exists today is essentially a racist. Okay, that's the narrative. It's a very simple narrative. And then divide and conquer. What they do is they pit the population against each other. What we don't hear, Al, is the fact that, and I'm going off onto a different piece now, but I think it's an important point to make, is when we hear about Black Lives Matter and the fact that we're a racist nation all of a sudden now, it's everywhere. Everybody is a racist, okay? The police are racist. The school system's racist. The hospitals are racist. You pick an institution, they're racist. Well, okay, what are they racist for and from, and why are they there? But more importantly, then we look at, well, okay, are the Italian immigrants racist? Or the German immigrants racist? Or the French immigrants racist? Or the Dutch immigrants racist? Or the Asians racist, right? And where does it stop? Because the country was founded off of a melting pot. It's not founded off of black population alone from West Africa. And by the way, it's a very small part of West Africa where the black originated from into the U.S., okay? And what the black population fails to recognize is they were sold into slavery by their own people in Africa. Okay, this is just a fact. It's not a racist comment. The African tribes in Africa sold their own people into slavery to the Europeans, and they were sent to Europe, and they were sent to South America, and they were sent to the islands to work. They weren't sent to America day one to be slaves of 5 generations ago. These people were sold into slavery by their own people. And slavery today and racism today is prevalent in Africa more than any place else in the world. They still sell their people into slavery. If you go to Libya, you can see slave markets, active slave markets in Libya. Okay, so we need to basically get a grip on the narrative. The problem is that doesn't fit the liberal leftist agenda. What they also don't talk about, hang on, Al, let me finish this. What they don't talk about. Hang on, Al.
I have pretty strong opinions on this, but let me give you my acid test for something. I would say that racism is alive and well, but the people that should be ashamed are the ones who have suffered under that racism from before. Jim Crow was horrible. Things were not good.
That was a Democrat Party agenda.
But let me just say this: the people today that were targeted in those situations are the worst racists ever. Here's what you do. Okay, let's take a name. Here's my favorite: the Congressional Black Caucus.
It's a racist, bigoted, and they also sell out their own people.
Here's what you do: change black to white. Change United Negro College Fund to United Caucasian College Fund. If the result sounds racist, then the former is racist.
Of course.
We need to do away with all this talk about unimportant differences. The color of your skin and the background that you have has absolutely nothing to do with your value as a human being, good or bad. What has to do is the content of your character. Martin Luther King used to say all the time, I'm going to judge you by the content of your character, not by the color of your skin. If we would stop focusing on this crap, it would go away.
Well, Al, here's the problem. Okay, we understand that. Okay, the problem is that the machine that manages, we'll call it the leftist socialist agenda, which is essentially a very powerful corporate, consortium, understands that they want to pit the American people against themselves.
That's
okay,
right.
And so they pit blacks against Asians. They pit blacks against Caucasians. They pit blacks against Indians, and blacks against Latinos. Now, here's something that Black Lives Matter and we'll call it the Black Caucus in Congress don't talk about. That the Latino population is outnumbering and outsurpassing the black population in this country, and the black population is being left in the dust. And they are basically selling out and basically suppressing their own, we'll call it ethnic identity, because they want to use race politics, they want to use identity politics. The Latino population in the U.S. has surpassed and will vastly surpass the black population. So, in an order of ranking, just from a pure identity politics, it'll be white Caucasian, it'll be Latino, it'll be Asian and black. That's basically the demographics of America. And where is the Black Democratic Caucus? Where's the Black Lives Matter? Where are all these activists trying to basically promote and support their people? Well, they understand that they get money by keeping their people down. And this is an Africa model. They're not stupid. The most corrupt people in the political world today are the Black Democratic Caucus, because all they do is take billions and billions of dollars for all of the minority-run cities and pilfer that money and embezzle it. Where is all the money that is going into these cities? These cities are run by minorities. City council is black for the most part. The mayors are black. The chief of police are black. I'm not saying identity politics is the key, but they're not being discriminated against by Asians or Latinos or white Caucasians. They're being discriminated against by their own people.
Well,
and they have stolen from them for years.
Look at identity politics is complete and utter horse hockey. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I don't care how many black people are in a particular job or how many women. How about we pick the right person for the job based on experience, capability,
right,
dedication, and courage, and all that?
You can't do it, Al. You can't do it because affirmative action, and in Africa they have black empowerment, initiatives, and it's reverse discrimination. Okay, the bottom line is when you create that model, and it doesn't matter whether it's white, Hispanic, Asian, black. It doesn't matter what model you create. When you create, quote unquote, a affirmative action model where one, either ethnic race or genetic race is given preference over another, you create discrimination, and then they have reverse discrimination, and that's the problem, and they know that, so they use that against the American people. So right now, all of a sudden, out of the blue, we're a racist nation across the board,
right?
And that is a false narrative. It's a lie. And it's an absolute fraud on the American people.
And it's a growing narrative as well. I mean, you are, you're out trying to fight this narrative, and
right.
Al, you are, but it's a narrative that is dividing this country so much greater, and it's a shame to see us go down this path. And it's kind of what you were first talking about, Al, as well as what is this going to be for the future of America when we are dividing us, we are going down a socialist path. At what point, go right to the beginning of our conversation, you're making people dependent on the government with the government giveaways.
I will tell you that we are more divided now by an order of magnitude than we were in 1860.
I agree.
And we all know maybe some people don't know what happened in 1861, but the American Civil War started over a lot less than what's going on today.
Al, I put out a video, and I'm going to encourage you to go watch it. It basically states that it opens by saying we're in a civil war, and you need to recognize what the signs of that civil war are. Nobody's shooting at each other wholesale right now, but we are in a civil war domestically,
right?
In a civil state. So we're in a deep trouble position in this country. But what's trickling down is to the small businesses. So once again, Casey and Al, the theme I think out of this is 50% of the small businesses in this country drive the economy. Okay, it is 50% of our economy. Now, of that 50%, they've been completely hammered by COVID, by Black Lives Matter, Antifa burning them down and looting and pillaging and boycotting and harassing. Look at what happened in New York last night. They basically are in the faces of the people that are just trying to eat dinner at an outside restaurant and patronize a restaurant that's probably been out of business forever. And, they just are trying to destroy what's left of these small businesses. These business owners haven't done anything wrong. And so when you take away those small businesses, you take away the very economic driver of this economy, and the liberal and the socialists know that. And so it puts the power in the hands of the larger corporations. Look at what happened in COVID. Who made the most money during COVID besides the pharmaceuticals? Home Depot, Lowe's, Amazon. They quadrupled in value. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars in enterprise value. All of these corporations basically became not only monopolies, oligopolies, okay, during COVID. Essentially, they control the very essence of U.S. existence today. Who controls all the bandwidth? Amazon. Amazon's got servers. They've got data rooms all over the world. It's not Google. Amazon has got so much control right now over your daily lives that people don't even realize. When they think, oh, I've got an Amazon Prime account, that's just the scratching of the surface. And Parler learned that lesson the hard way, didn't they?
They sure did.
Okay. So the point of the matter is by killing small businesses, the liberal and leftist regime understands that they basically put America under their thumb, the average American. And that's what Al is facing today, because the more they kill them, and they can kill them in 20 different ways. They can promote BLM and Antifa, burning them down. And they can basically say, well, we have a right to do this, which is what they're saying. Do you know that the founder of BLM, one of the founders of BLM, went on TV and said, we have a right to burn, loot, pillage, and plunder in perpetuity, and it will never pay back what we think we're owed. Wait, no, what are you owed?
And who did you burn down? Another small business owner. Somebody that's trying to provide jobs, trying to add to the community.
They said they could loot every Walmart in the country, and they would never be repaid for anything that they were owed. I mean, I'm not sure what they think they're owed.
Yeah, what are you owed? Exactly.
Right.
That's a very good point. You know, and I'll circle back a little bit too. Let's tell folks what this means in terms of the raised or increase in cost for you. Lisa Solenke actually had commented back on the earlier part of the program that cattle grain she used to buy weekly, or that she does buy weekly, has gone up $1.49 in just the last week. So that means it's costing her more to feed the cattle. Getting to a point, because you serve hamburgers, Al, one of the things that you serve. And that means her cattle are going to be more expensive to buy. Gets to your restaurant, you now have to pay increased wages because minimum wage is going up and other factors. You're trying to bring people in. I'm sure you probably have to pay people more so that they work for you because you're having a hard time finding people. What does this mean to the end user, the consumer, the customer?
Well, the bottom line is increasing price. You know, one of the most surprising things that I see is people thinking that a higher minimum wage is actually going to help anybody. In general, what happens is the higher minimum wage drives prices up, and the people who were already close to that higher minimum wage to start with lose buying power, and the ones who are raised up don't get any more buying power at the end of the day. But our business, not to go into too much accounting, but there's basically two major things that go into our cost structure. It's cost of goods sold. That's the things you just mentioned, buying the beef, getting, all the stuff that goes into what we sell. And then there's the expenses. And the biggest expense, of course, is salaries. And the second biggest is taxes. So you've got those, if you want, that's two legs or maybe three, depending on how you look at it. Everything's going up. It doesn't take, a physicist to figure out that that's going to raise prices. Now, in September, we have something else that's going to exacerbate this. It's that minimum wage increase. It goes up to $10 an hour in September and then continues for $1 a year until it's finished at $15. And that's going to be the new minimum wage in Florida. I've already mentioned what I think of that. But when that kicks in, and there's another, so first of all, there's an idea of that. Now, the way minimum wage works in Florida right now is there's three basic tiers. There's a handicapped minimum wage, a tipped minimum wage, and and then the regular minimum wage. What the Biden administration has said is they want to make it a federal thing that there is no differentiation. Minimum wage is minimum wage. So what that means is if we go to $15 an hour, the minimum wage in Florida is just under $6 an hour for tipped employees because they make most of their money from gratuities. If he were to raise that to 15, and he wants to actually accelerate that at a federal level, which would take precedence over Florida's cadence, then we're going to see a $15. If we see a $15 minimum wage for servers, you're going to see kiosks, you're going to see self-serve, you're not going to have servers anymore. The servers are probably not going to be tipped because the price increases that are going to be needed in order to, support that kind of a structure are going to keep people from tipping. They're going to say, well, I'm not paying. If I have to pay this, I'm certainly not going to give a tip on top of it because probably I can't afford it.
Well, Al,
it's a nightmare.
That's the model. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know what you're going to say, and I agree with you completely. You've said it a couple of times.
Yeah.
This I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I don't believe, that anything is really all that hidden if you pay attention. This isn't hidden. This is exactly what people are trying to do, is make them dependent, because the first step to subjugate a population is to make them dependent on you.
100%.
And that's what they're doing. And so, I'll use a perfect example, Casey, and both of you, and I'll get a little plug in at the same time. On Wednesdays, Archie's has a special. We have a burger that's the best burger in the world. It's called an Archie burger. We're not very creative, with names. But the Archie burger is an amazing hamburger, and we have kept the price at my bidding down to $10 a burger forever. It's been that way for a long time. And even on Wednesdays, we lower that to $5 a burger. We have a big promotion. Everybody comes in. It's always nice and packed. And it's a great deal for somebody who, might not normally go out and eat. They would go out and do that because it's affordable and blah, blah, blah. We're not going to be able to do that anymore. In fact, we're probably going to go to somewhere around $15 base around September. We're going to have to. And if the taxes keep going up, then I can't promise anything. But the price that we charge normally will be the price that we do on a day special like that, if we can still do the special at all. You know what a loss leader is, right? It's things
Yes.
You bring people in, you basically give it away to show them what your product like. We call it advertising, part of the advertising, bubble, and we're not going to be able to do that anymore. So the $15 an hour is going to have less buying power than the $10 to $11 an hour does now.
That's right. That's right. And that's what people don't realize. You're making more, but everything is going to cost much more. You're not going to be able to buy as much. You hit the nail on the head. Another interesting point from Lisa with the cattle, not making any money off cattle. There's no transparency or competition in our domestic market. The big four packers control the market. USDA sold us out long ago. It's part of their vertical integration agenda. We grassroots producers are becoming extinct. That's grassroots producers. That's another small business.
That's a small business, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they've already sold out the meat processing and meat packing industry. They've already allowed that to be globalized, essentially owned by offshore entities. China. And Al, you're a symptom of the, you're exhibiting symptoms of the cancer called socialism, my friend.
I agree.
That's right.
Yep.
I agree completely.
Now, let me give you an example. As you know, you probably know, I lived in Europe for over 10 years and worked all over the world. But in Europe, this is where they're going. They're based their model. Look, the liberal socialists are not very bright. When it comes to like masking what they're doing, but they don't really have to, because remember, they think voters are 2 steps below dumb. So their theory and philosophy has been proven year in, year out, over election cycle after election cycle. But to folks like ourselves who are bright, educated, and are business-minded, and who actually have done something productive in our life in some form, we see right through it. So what they're doing to the service industry is very simple. They're doing what they did in Europe. They're basically putting them on essentially a fixed salary. That's where you're going. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm giving it to you, Al. You're not going to like the answer, but the service industry in the U.S., the food service industry, is being pushed into a fixed price model. Now, yes, what that will lead to is less employees, no question about it. What that means is, in Europe, for example, why don't Europeans tip? Because they know that the waiters and waitresses are on a salary. They're on a fixed, guaranteed salary by law. Okay, they get to take 6 weeks vacation by law. Okay, plus unpaid leave days and everything else. So they're putting the U.S. businesses in that position, in that model. That's where it's going. What that will lead to is putting more people out of work, because the businesses that stay there will essentially be the high-priced, high margin, or moderate margin, expensive restaurants and bars that people can afford. But the smaller to medium sized businesses will just go out. They just won't be able to. That's not their market. They're not into that high-priced margin market. If you're making 1.5% margin, you're not in the high-priced margin market. Or what you do is, if you try to go order a glass of wine or a cocktail in London, you're going to pay $25 or $30. I'm not kidding you. Okay, you're going to pay $25 or $30 for a glass of wine or a vodka.
Because you got to pay the wages.
It's the wages. It's the tax. Right. So what's going to happen is, you get ready, Al. The taxes on the booze is coming next. Okay, So the 3 or 4 things that the socialists will tax, and they're doing it in the U.S. Look at the fuel prices already. They're going to tax petrol, fuel.
Right.
They're going to tax cigarettes, which I agree on. I'm not a big cigarette guy. I don't smoke. They're going to tax all of the beverages, beer, alcohol, wine, everything. And then basically they're going to bring up the cost of goods sold by essentially forcing a fixed cost on the businesses. What that forces somebody like an Al to do is just say, okay, look, the $10 burger needs to be 15 or 20. Okay, the glass of wine needs to be $10, not $5. A vodka needs to be whatever. And so, but it basically forces people to come in and not, essentially spend on, they have $100 they can spend for a dinner. Well, that $100 doesn't go very far,
right?
When you start changing those economics around. And the net result of that, though, is more unemployment, and that's exactly what they want because they basically put people on, we call it the dole in Europe, it's social welfare in the U.S., it's unemployment, it's this and that. How long can you stay unemployed as a society? And how long can the country afford it is my question.
Right. The money's got to come from somewhere, and if you're unemployed, you're certainly not paying into the system.
That's right.
At the risk of opening up another can of worms towards the end here, what we haven't talked about is all those things are true, and then what exacerbates the whole thing is the value of the dollar.
Well,
you can't continue to put more and more money into a system and expect it to maintain its value.
Well, Al,
so what that penalizes, the people who have saved their whole lives in dollars that actually had some value are going to find out that the number they have in their bank account is not worth what it was worth when they saved it.
Well, you raise a very good question. We could have an hour-long discussion on it, but I'll summarize it by saying, look at the value of the stock market today. Okay, look at our national debt, which is well over $30 trillion on paper now. Look at the value of the stock market, which is well over 30,000, and look at the fact that our small businesses and all of our economic drivers have been hit, including energy, which is the number one driver. The cost of goods sold for you is labor. The cost of goods sold for industrial manufacturing is energy cost, okay? And they're hitting that hard. So that means it costs that much more to make something, whatever it is. And you ask yourself, well, how can that be, right? It cannot be. It will not hold. And the model that they're perpetuating is a very short-lived crash and burn model. And they know it. And the folks like myself and others who are in the financial and industrial market know it. And so why do you think they're trying to jam this all through so quickly? It's like a funnel. They're trying to push everything through the funnel real quick. It's going to blow up. And so the question is, when is it going to blow up? I don't have the answer. I'm not a crystal ball. But I will say we're heading for a catastrophic failure here in this country, economically, socially. And the end result is the small businesses are the losers.
Yeah, they are. And then the end result, as Al was saying too, is the people.
The people. Yeah.
We're
the first line of small businesses are responsible for the lion's share of the salaries in this country.
They're the largest employer in this country. Small businesses are.
By far. Yeah.
And they're going to be hit first at the hardest. And I just don't think that you call them the dumbed down voter. I call them the uninformed voters. They don't see it coming.
I don't say they're dumb. I say the liberal socialist handlers call them dumb. Okay, I'm not saying voter. I'm saying, yeah, I agree. Voters are uninformed. And one of the reasons why I founded America First was to inform voters. I mean, and talk till I'm blue in the face.
Yes.
And you do the same thing. But you have to understand, the machine considers them 2 steps below dumb. That's their rhetoric. And if you go and have a backroom discussion with the political operatives, they will tell you all day long, yep, you're right, but 6 months before the election, we're just going to jam them, and the voters are 2 steps below dumb, and they're going to do what we want. And that's exactly what they do, year in, year out.
They do. We're winding down to the end of our hour here already, so it flew right on by. Al Moskowitz, again, if you're in the Fort Pierce area, definitely look up Archie Seabreeze. It's not only really good food, it's a lot of fun as well. So,
hey, I have a question for Al.
Go ahead.
Al, hey, KW here. So, Al, look, I founded America First Political Committee. Would you be willing to hold an America First rally at your place? Because patriots are looking for somewhere to go where we can basically, get them excited about making change.
Let's talk about those details. Of course. Listen, I'm all for bringing this country back to the greatness that it was when my grandparents and my parents lived in it. I got to tell you guys, I'm 58 years old, and I started in the 60s. And it hasn't been going in a very good direction since then. So anything that turns that or tries to turn it or efforts towards turning it, I'm all for.
We got to start locally, grassroots.
We do.
Yeah, grassroots.
Yep.
Also, I'm going to shout out here Lisa, who was chiming in about the beef. She said it's imported from 22 foreign countries. Consumers have zero clue where their beef is buying. And she says visit labelourbeef.com, demandusbeef.com, and checkoffvote.com. Support your local farmers. So just wanted to give you that shout out, Lisa. Agree. Support the local farmers and our local businesses.
Absolutely.
So, Al Moskowitz, thanks so much for joining us by phone. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Fantastic
Thanks,
patriot
guys.
up there in Fort Pierce, and great conversation today. KW?
It was.
Yeah, hey, Al, you're a patriot, and look, we will be in touch with you about the America First rally at your place. So be prepared.
All right, buddy. I'm easy to find. I'm a large target.
You know it. And again, America First, you have that pinned to the top of the KC and KW page, a link
We do.
to it.
We do.
Definitely follow that, and you have an email list to follow to
We do.
sign up on,
We
just
do.
in case you ever get booted off Facebook, which will likely happen.
Right. Well, let's be clear. Right. We know going into the 2022 elections, which are not that far away. Can you believe it? Right.
I
Because it
know it.
happens very quickly.
It does.
That the social media tech giants will start to weed out the conservative platforms that have built back up, which includes America First. It'll include I'm sure it'll include KW Miller America First on Facebook. So I encourage everybody to go to www.americafirstpc.org and sign up. That way we can get an email to you.
Always be in communication. So there you go. We coming to you live Thursdays, 10 a.m. from our beautiful South Florida here in Stuart, Florida. And we'll be back again and have all kinds of fun topics to talk about. And you never know what it's going to be, just like what Al brought up today. Brand new, or not brand new, but a much higher unemployment tax that is a burden for our small businesses. And so much more. And I know, KW, you had a lot to talk about on the BLM riots, and we didn't get too much into that.
Well, maybe we can pick up on that next week or the
There you
following
go.
week. Yeah, we'll put that on our agenda. Let's just leave this for the viewers. BLM Antifa are just getting started, and so we're going to have to address it. So let's watch it, and we'll be talking about it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for tuning in to the KC and KW show. We'll see you next week.